What's up, guys? Asian here again with part 2 of our kind of examination of Aegis Caller as a set. And this is just a little bit more of a detailed test that I did concerning the AoE potential of Aegis Caller. This time I'm comparing it to Azureblight as well as New Moon Acolyte, and then I tested out a recommendation from several people to try out Aegis Caller with Azureblight and compare that to both of those sets individually with Lakestes. So here are the results here, and I think you guys might be surprised by the results, or you might not be. I guess it depends on what your prior assumptions were before watching this video. So before I jump into it, methodology pretty much remained exactly the same. However, I did include a second test here. As you guys can tell here, this test only had the trial dummy and then 4 of the 3 million dummies instead of I think I had like a little over a dozen trial dummies previously. And I did this test along with the dozen plus target dummies to kind of give 2 different scenarios. The first one being fairly unrealistic, although it can possibly happen, where you have many ads all grouped together. You'll probably have situations like this mostly in probably dungeons as well as in the 4-man arenas, so that'd be DSA and Black Rose Prison. Probably not going to be happening very often in trials. This situation, one that I had you see in front of you with 4 smaller ads and 1 big ad, that might be a little bit more realistic to what you'd see in a trial. Most trials, the trash fights will typically speaking have anywhere between 2 to 5 large ads, so to speak, and then maybe a few smaller ads. And these large ads, typically speaking, will be the ones that have anywhere between 2 to 4 million health or somewhere around there. And the smaller ads would typically have somewhere in the 6 figures, so normally anywhere between 400 to 600k health or so. And again, for trials, this is a little bit more common where you have 2 or 3 large, bigger targets and maybe a couple other smaller targets. If you think about Sunspire, for example, you have the Sentrats as well as the Fates, the big Akajits there as your big targets, and you have kind of smaller targets as well in there mixed in. But generally speaking, you typically won't be seeing much more of maybe, let's say, like half a dozen to maybe 10 ads at a time in those kind of situations. So this is a little bit more realistic, this scenario that we have right here. So going into the DPS numbers. So this one right here, this is with Azureblight. So Azureblight, for those of you guys who don't know about the set itself, oops, wrong number, is a set that you can get from, I believe it is from, where is it? Yeah, Lair of Marsalok. So this is the medium armor set from Lair of Marsalok. You'll notice here that it has a stamina regen on the 4-piece, very similar to Aegis Caller that has a stamina regen on the 3-piece here. But Azureblight has a pretty interesting effect here. So whenever you deal damage to the damage over time effect, you apply a stack of Blight Seed to your target for 5 seconds. Once you get 20 stacks, the Blight Seeds explode. An enemy can only have 1 instance of Blight Seed applied at a time. Once you have reached 20 stacks, you can't infect that same enemy for 2 seconds. So you can apply this to multiple enemies. So if you have an AoE damage over time, like Endless Hail, for example, you'd be able to apply that stack of Blight Seed to everybody within that AoE. So very powerful set here. Now the downside of Azureblight and why you don't really see it every stamina DPS running it is because you can only have 1 instance of Blight Seed out. So everybody has a unique, I should say, shares the same Blight Seed. There's really no reason to have multiple people in Azureblight because it won't work out very well. So typically speaking, if you are running Azureblight, it will only be 1 person who is running Azureblight because only 1 person can take advantage of the Blight Seed debuff there. But going back to the combat metrics report, this first one is with the, let's see how many target dummies are there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 target dummies with the Iron Atro, so 18 total targets here. As you can see, that Azureblight is just incredibly powerful because we have our AoE damage over time components. We have Soul Trap, Soul Splitting Trap, and then we have Brawler, and then we also have our AoE through Endless Hail. So very clearly, you're getting a lot of ticks of Azureblight going here. So you actually managed to kill about, we killed 5 of the dummies actually. So really, really powerful here. That doesn't really come to that much of a surprise considering you have so many targets and so you have so many Azureblight seeds just going off during this fight. This next one here is with Aegis Caller, 354k, so noticeably weaker than Azureblight, but again, this is kind of like a best case scenario for Azureblight. The more ads that you have, the stronger Azureblight's going to get, which is why we did the fewer target tests a little bit later, just to kind of even things out a little bit and also get a more realistic scenario. But Aegis Caller pulled 354, and then during New Moon Acolyte we pulled 326, so pretty much the same conclusion that we came to with part 1, that Aegis Caller is stronger than New Moon Acolyte. Just add in Azureblight, and as we've seen, it is not quite as strong as Azureblight here. Although this particular situation greatly favors Azureblight because you have so many targets and therefore so many Blight Seeds going off at the same time. It's not that big of a surprise. These next tests are with only 4 target skeletons and 1 Iron Atro, so 5 targets total. This first one here is New Moon Acolyte. We have 133k as our total DPS. This one is Aegis Caller, 129k total DPS. We can run it up to 130. So you can see here at this point we're getting more damage out of New Moon Acolyte than we are with Aegis Caller, and that sort of makes sense because much like Blight Seed with Aegis Caller, you're hitting just a lot more targets with Aegis Caller, so you're getting a lot more damage out of the set itself. So with fewer targets, it does seem like New Moon Acolyte is going to end up being a little bit stronger in overall damage, although if we take a look at our sustain, sustain is going to obviously take a hit here. So kind of the same testing methodology as part 1, where I just hit things until we hit a minute, and then I stopped hitting things and let my dots run out. So you can see we did drop below 25% stamina here towards the end versus over here with Aegis Caller where we didn't really drop below 50 too much. We dropped under maybe for a few seconds here, but that's pretty much it. And that additional stamina regen is kind of what helps us out here for Aegis Caller. Then finally, this one is with Azureblight, and we pulled 155.6k. So Azureblight's still stronger even with the fewer targets here. Again, because we have those AoE damage over time abilities, Soul Splitting Trap, Endless Hail, Brawler, etc. So Azureblight still remains one of the best, if not the best, sets for AoE Cleave if you had to choose only one and pair it with Laquestes. So this is paired with Laquestes on the front bar. Now this final test is with both Azureblight and Aegis Caller. I have Aegis Caller on the front bar here, although you could, if you wanted, use a Master's two-handed here for submissional cleave damage, I should say additional bleed damage, and then just run 5-piece Azureblight, 5-piece Aegis Caller, and give up the Monster Helm set. That's perfectly valid as an option, although you might want to still use Marsalok instead of Beldreth here for some additional cleave, because Marsalok does have a Conal. And here we pulled just under 160k. So again, this is without Laquestes. So 155.6 with Azureblight and Laquestes. When we added an Aegis Caller instead of Laquestes, we pulled just shy of 160k. So for cleave damage, it does seem like Aegis Caller and Azureblight combined is going to be the best option. Now, of course, Azureblight can only be worn by one person in the group, so only one person will be able to wear this combo. The other stamina DPS will have to settle with either New Moon Acolyte or Aegis Caller. So you can really pick whichever set you want based on these 5 target tests. It does seem like New Moon Acolyte is a little bit stronger, but once we start getting into more and more targets, Aegis Caller does end up pulling ahead. So you really have several options here. One thing I will point out is that Aegis Caller set we're not hitting the pen cap here, so we should be hitting around 5850, which we do hit with New Moon Acolyte. So if we were to get a little bit more penetration here, then Aegis Caller would end up pulling out probably close to, if not slightly ahead of New Moon Acolyte. So just something you want to keep in mind here. So in general, I would say I would recommend farming for Aegis Caller as a stamina DPS because it is still a pretty decent AoE set here. I'm still need to explore the single target potential. I don't think it is going to be great for single targets, although it might still be useful in fights where you might need to split between single target and AoE damage. Maybe you're moving between targets too often for Reliquant to build up, something like that. Maybe cleave is more important than just raw single target boss damage. So I think it'll still be good for that, but I do want to do a couple of tests with a couple of different sets to kind of make it before I make an overall recommendation for Aegis Caller for single target boss fights. But for cleave fights, I would highly recommend trying to get a set of Aegis Caller put together. Whether that is on the body or front bar set doesn't seem to really matter too much here, as long as you're able to get a full 5-piece set together. But that concludes this video. Hopefully you guys found this informative. Let me know down in the comment section below if there's anything else you would like me to test. Again, hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys in the next dungeon.